The most dangerous reset in retirement does not arrive with a siren. It arrives as a convenience. It arrives as a friendly website, a government portal, a low-fee menu, a match that sounds like free money, and a promise that the retirement system is finally being opened for people who were left outside the gates. I want you to listen carefully, because this is where ordinary people make their biggest financial mistakes. They hear the word access and assume it means advantage. They hear the word match and assume it means wealth. They hear the word alternative and assume it means superior, and they hear the word retirement and assume somebody has designed the system for their benefit. That is not how money works. I have spent a lifetime watching good people lose money, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they misunderstood incentives. They looked at the wrapper and forgot to inspect what was inside it. They saw a tax benefit and forgot to ask what they were buying. They saw a government program and forgot that every program has a funnel. And every funnel decides who captures the flow. This new retirement reset, whether you call it a Trump IRA, a Saver S-Match, a simplified retirement doorway, or a broader opening of 401k, plans to private assets, is not one story. It is two stories happening at the same time. The first story is simple and useful. Millions of Americans do not have a retirement plan at work. They drive for platforms, freelance, work for small businesses, change jobs often, or live in the part of the economy that never received the clean automatic payroll pipeline that corporate employees take for granted. For those people, a simple doorway into low-cost retirement accounts can be a good thing. The second story is more dangerous. Once the government starts building new doors into retirement capital, Wall Street starts asking a different question: how much of that capital can be redirected into products that pay higher fees? That is the part I want you to understand, because the great retirement mistake in America has never been that people did not know the alphabet soup. IRA, Roth, IRA, 401k. SEP, simple target date fund, private equity sleeve, digital asset allocation. The mistake is that people forgot the first principle. A retirement account is not wealth. It is only a container. The wealth comes from what you put inside, what you pay to own it, how long you leave it alone, and whether you behave sensibly when the world is trying to make you do something foolish. A beautiful container filled with expensive nonsense is still nonsense. A plain container filled with productive assets, bought at low cost and held patiently for decades, can change a family's life. That is the mother line of this entire story. Do not confuse access with ownership. Do not confuse ownership with discipline. And do not confuse discipline with freedom until the assets inside the account can support your life. For decades, the American retirement system has had one brutal flaw. It rewards people who are already attached to good institutions. If you work for a large company with a competent benefits department, you may get a 401k. Money leaves your paycheck before you can spend it. Your employer may match part of your contribution. The plan may offer broad index funds. You may not understand everything, but the system nudges you in the right direction. If you are a contractor, a waitress working 2 jobs, a barber renting a chair, a ride, share driver, a self-employed designer, or an employee of a small shop that never set up a plan, you are mostly on your own. And when ordinary people are left on their own, many of them do nothing. That is not because they are stupid. It is because friction is expensive. Every extra decision reduces participation. Which account should I open? Traditional or Roth? Which company should I trust? What fee is reasonable? What fund should I choose? Can I afford to contribute? What happens if I need the money? Am I doing something wrong? A person may have good intentions and still never start because the first step feels too foggy. That is why automatic systems matter. A good 401k does something very valuable. It removes the negotiation between your future self and your present appetite. The money leaves before the urge to spend it shows up. I have always liked systems that make good behavior automatic. The reason many people build wealth is not that they wake up every morning with heroic discipline. It is that they build rails. The paycheck arrives, the contribution happens, the fund buys more shares, and the investor gets on with life. After 30 years, everybody calls it genius. In reality, it was a machine. The proposed retirement doorway for workers without an employer plan is trying to build a version of that machine for people who were never invited into the corporate version. Let's put a sensible, but sensible does not mean sufficient. A $1,000 match can help. It can encourage a person to put away the first $2,000. If a young worker who has never invested before contributes and receives a match, that is a powerful first lesson. It says, your money can attract more money if you move first. That psychological shift matters, but do not mistake it for a retirement plan. A $1,000 match is a spark. It is not a fire. The family that becomes financially secure does not do it because one year the government added money to an account. It does it because the household builds a permanent habit of surplus. It spends less than it earns. It increases earning power. It avoids high-interest debt. It buys low-cost ownership in productive assets. It repeats that behavior through dull years, frightening years, election years, inflation years, and years when neighbors seem to be getting rich faster. The match may open the door. The behavior builds the house. This is why I want you to separate three things that most people lump together. The first is access. Access means you are allowed to enter the game. The second is allocation. Allocation means what you actually own once you enter. The third is temperament. Temperament means whether you can leave the money alone long enough for the assets to do the heavy lifting. Most policy debates focus on access. Wall Street focuses on allocation because that is where fees are earned. But wealth is usually decided by temperament. A person with a simple Roth IRA buying a low-cost broad market fund every month for 35 years can end up far ahead of a person with a fancy retirement plan filled with expensive strategies they do not understand. The first person is boring and rich. The second person is sophisticated and disappointed. You must decide which kind of investor you want to be. Now let us talk about the part that sounds exciting because excitement is where fees hide. The government has also moved toward opening 401k plans more broadly to alternative assets, such as private equity, private credit, real estate, infrastructure, commodities, and digital assets. The argument is simple. Wealthy families and institutions have had access to these investments for a long time. Regular workers have mostly been limited to public stocks, bonds, and cash, like funds. Therefore, why not let ordinary workers participate in the same opportunities on the surface? That sounds fair. But finance is full of ideas that sound fair at the surface and become expensive underneath. There is a reason I have said many times that Wall Street is the only place where people ride to work in a Rolls-Royce to get advice from those who take the subway. The problem is not that all alternative assets are bad. That would be too simple. Some private businesses are wonderful, some real estate assets are excellent, some private credit arrangements are rational, some infrastructure assets can throw off durable cash. There are serious investors who understand these areas and have done very well in them. The problem is that an asset class that works for a university endowment with a 100-year horizon, a staff of analysts, preferred access, legal teams, and the ability to tolerate illiquidity may not work the same way for a school teacher. S401k. The school teacher cannot spend a valuation model. The school teacher cannot retire on a glossy brochure. And the school teacher should not be forced to pay premium fees for an asset that cannot be priced clearly, cannot be sold quickly, and cannot be understood easily. That is the alternative asset door. Once it opens, good things and bad things can walk through it. Good managers can offer real diversification. Bad managers can offer complexity at a high price. The ordinary worker may not know the difference. The employer may fear lawsuits. The regulator may write rules. But in the end, the saver has to live with the outcome. I am not against access. I am against confusion. A lifetime of savings should not be turned into a laboratory for products that need retirement money more than retirement savers need those products. If a private asset comes into a retirement plan, the question should be ruthless. What is the total fee? How is it valued? Can it be sold in a crisis? Who benefits if the worker holds it for 30 years? Who benefits if it simply gets added to a fund and quietly charges fees? Does it reduce risk, or does it only make the plan look modern? Does the worker understand it well enough to sit through a terrible period without panicking? You do not need many great investments in life. You need a few sound ones, purchased at sensible costs, and held with unusual patience. Complexity should earn its place. It should not be admitted simply because it sounds exclusive. I have known many wealthy people. The truly wealthy are often not chasing access to every exotic thing on earth. They are trying to avoid permanent mistakes. Permanent mistakes matter more than temporary underperformance. If you own an index fund and the market falls 35%, that is painful, but it may not be permanent if you do not sell and the underlying businesses remain strong. If you pay enormous fees into an opaque product, misunderstand the liquidity, panic during a downturn, or discover too late that the structure served the manager better than it served you, that can become permanent. The first rule of retirement money is not to get clever. The first rule is to survive long enough for compounding to work. This is where most people reverse the order of operations. They want a special investment before they have a stable savings habit. They want private equity before they have an emergency fund. They want crypto inside a retirement account before they understand the difference between pre-tax and after-tax money. They want a government match before they have proven they can keep $2,000 from being swallowed by ordinary consumption. That is backwards. The right order is simple. First, create a surplus, then protect yourself from disaster, then capture every rational match, then buy low-cost productive assets, then increase contributions as income rises. Then, after the foundation is strong, consider whether more complex tools deserve a small place in the structure. That is how a financial house is built. You do not install a glass balcony before pouring the foundation. Now, I want to speak plainly about the Roth question because it matters for young people and low earners. If you are in a low tax bracket today, paying the tax now and allowing decades of growth to compound tax, free can be enormously powerful. A Roth IRA is not magic. It is simply a deal with the tax code. You pay today, you grow tomorrow, and if the rules are followed, qualified withdrawals later can be tax-free. That can be a beautiful arrangement for a young worker. But again, the Roth itself is only a container. A Roth IRA filled with expensive funds is a leak. A Roth IRA filled with speculative mistakes is a casino with a tax benefit. A Roth IRA filled with a low-cost broad fund fed steadily for 40 years is one of the most democratic wealth machines ever created. The ordinary person does not need to beat the professionals. The ordinary person needs to stop donating to them through fees, taxes, panic, and impatience. There is a huge difference between being invited to invest and being taught how not to self-destruct. The new retirement doorway may help with the invitation. It will not automatically give you the second part. That part is your responsibility. You must understand that the retirement system is full of incentives that do not line up perfectly with yours. Politicians like programs that sound generous. Financial institutions like assets under management. Private managers like new pools of capital. Employers like reduced legal uncertainty. Media companies like headlines and you, the saver, need only one thing. You need your future purchasing power to be protected and grown. Everything else is secondary. If a plan does not help with that, it does not matter how impressive the name sounds. A worker with no retirement account at all is vulnerable. Inflation eats cash. Consumer habits eat paychecks, emergencies eat progress. The person who never starts investing remains dependent on labor forever. But a worker inside a retirement account can still be vulnerable if they misunderstand the machine. There are several traps. The first is the free money trap. A match is valuable, but it can make people focus on the bonus instead of the system. If someone contributes $2,000 once to get a $1,000 match and then stops, they have received help but not built a habit. If someone contributes every year, raises the contribution as income rises, and leaves the money invested sensibly, then the match becomes an accelerator. The second is the low-fee illusion. Low fees matter. They matter enormously. But a low administrative fee does not guarantee a wise allocation. Paying little to own the wrong thing is still a mistake. Paying little to chase performance is still a mistake. Paying little to panic, sell is still a mistake. The third is the alternative asset mirage. Some people will hear that private investments are available and assume they are better because wealthy people use them. This is envy dressed up as strategy. Wealthy people also use lawyers, tax planning, insurance structures, liquidity planning, and professional due diligence. You cannot copy one ingredient from a wealthy family's kitchen and assume you are cooking the same meal. The fourth is the liquidity blind spot. Public market funds can usually be sold quickly. Private assets may not be. In a good year, nobody cares. In a bad year, liquidity becomes oxygen. If your retirement account owns something that cannot be valued or sold when fear is high, you must understand that before you buy it, not after. The fifth is the fee fog. The fee you see may not be the only fee you pay. There may be layers, management fees, fund expenses, performance fees, transaction costs, valuation costs, administration costs. A small-looking percentage, compounded over decades, can quietly transfer a fortune from the saver to the provider. The sixth is the behavior gap. Even a good portfolio will fail in the hands of an undisciplined owner. The S&P 500 has created enormous wealth over long periods. But many investors have earned less than the market because they bought after excitement and sold after fear. The account does not save you from yourself. You have to do that. This is why I often return to the same dull principles. They are dull because they spend less than you earn. Avoid credit card debt, keep enough cash so a flat tire does not become a financial crisis. Take full advantage of rational matches. Use tax-advantaged accounts wisely. Prefer low-cost, own productive assets. Do not interrupt compounding unnecessarily. Be very suspicious of anything sold to you with urgency. Those principles do not trend on social media. They do not make people feel brilliant at a party, but they build a life that does not collapse when the economy hiccups. Retirement is not an age. Retirement is a funding problem. You are trying to build a pile of productive assets large enough to send cash back to you when your labor slows down, when your body changes, when your employer no longer needs you, or when you simply decide that your remaining years are too valuable to sell by the hour. That is what this is really about. It is not about whether one president's name appears on a website. It is not about whether a government match is branded one way or another. It is not about whether private equity gets a new pathway into a target date fund. It is about whether your future self will own enough claims on productive assets to live with dignity. When you understand that, the noise gets quieter. You do not ask, is this politically exciting? You ask, does this help a worker become an owner? You do not ask, is this new? You ask, is this durable? You do not ask, can I get access to what rich people buy? You ask, can I understand it, hold it, afford it, and survive it? You do not ask, will this make me rich quickly? You ask, will this improve the odds that I will not be poor slowly? That is the Buffett test. Most people fail it because they want the financial world to be entertaining. Compounding is not entertaining. It is mechanical. It works quietly until one day the result looks miraculous, but it was not miraculous. It was arithmetic repeated with discipline. I want you to imagine two workers. The first hears about the new retirement portal and does nothing. He says he will start when he has more money, when the economy looks better, when he understands more, when life calms down. Years pass, nothing changes. His money leaks into rent, food, cars, phones, emergencies, and small pleasures that leave no trace. He reaches 55 with resentment and no machine. The second worker earns modestly but begins. She contributes enough to capture the match if she qualifies. She opens a Roth IRA if that makes sense for her tax situation. She buys a broad low-cost fund. She ignores products she does not understand. She increases contributions whenever income rises. She does not get rich fast. She does not look impressive. But every month, a tiny piece of the American and global economy becomes hers. At 30, the difference looks small. At 40, the difference is visible. At 50, the difference becomes emotional. At 60, the first worker needs permission. And the second worker has options. That is the difference between talking about retirement and building it. Now let us be honest about low-income workers. It is easy for people with comfortable salaries to say, just save $2,000. For many families, that is not easy at all. Food, rent, insurance, gas, childcare, and medical bills can eat every dollar. But difficult does not mean optional. If a household cannot save $2,000 in a year, the answer may not begin with investment selection. It may begin with income, housing, debt, and spending structure. A retirement account cannot fix a broken household cash flow by itself. The machine needs fuel. This is why personal finance advice often becomes insulting when it ignores reality. Some people are not failing because they bought too much coffee. They are failing because the margin between income and survival is too thin. But even then, the principle remains. The goal is to create a gap. Any gap, $10 a week, $25 a week. A tax refund, partially saved instead of fully spent. A side job for a season, a debt eliminated. So the payment can be redirected, a raise split between life and ownership instead of swallowed whole by lifestyle. The first dollars are the hardest because they feel meaningless. They are not meaningless. They are identity dollars. They prove that you are no longer only a consumer, you are becoming an owner. And once a person becomes an owner, even in a small way, the world looks different. A worker sees a company and thinks, I buy from that company. An owner sees a company and thinks, that company works for me. A worker sees inflation and thinks, everything is getting expensive. An owner sees inflation and asks, what assets have pricing power? A worker sees a market decline and thinks, I am losing. An owner with cash and patience thinks, good businesses may be on sale. That identity flip is more important than the match. The match helps you start. The identity keeps you going. There is another issue that needs to be said carefully. Government programs can encourage good behavior, but they cannot repeal human nature. If people receive easier access to accounts, some will use them well, others will ignore them, some will chase hot funds, others will get frightened by volatility, Some will let fees quietly erode decades of progress. Others will leave money in cash inside the account and wonder why nothing happened. The account is not the teacher, experience becomes the teacher. And experience charges tuition. I would rather you pay attention before the tuition bill arrives. If you are offered a retirement account, ask the simplest questions first. What is the match? What are the income limits? What are the contribution limits? Is this traditional or Roth? What taxes apply later? What funds are available? What are the all-in costs? How diversified am I? How easily can I understand the strategy? What would make me sell? What would happen in a 40% market decline? If you cannot answer those questions, do not reach for the most complex option on the menu. Start with the plain meal. There is no shame in owning a broad, low-cost portfolio. There is shame in pretending to understand something because a salesperson used words that made you feel behind. The best investors I know have a deep respect for what they do not know. Ignorance is not the enemy if you recognize it. Unrecognized ignorance is the enemy. A retirement reset could help millions of people if it lowers friction, reduces fees, encourages saving, and keeps workers focused on simple ownership. It could hurt people if it becomes a distribution channel for expensive, illiquid, complicated products pushed into accounts that were supposed to be safe enough for ordinary workers. Both futures are possible. That is why your understanding matters. The law can create the doorway, the regulator can write the rule, the website can list the options, but no one can outsource judgment for you completely. At some point, you have to decide what kind of financial life you are building. A life of consumption first and saving later rarely reaches later. A life of chasing exciting investments usually ends with expensive lessons. A life built around steady ownership, reasonable costs, tax awareness, and patience will not make you famous, but it may make you free. And freedom is the only financial status worth caring about. Not the car, not the watch, not the vacation photos, not the ability to sound sophisticated at dinner. Freedom is when your assets cover enough of your needs that you are no longer terrified of every employer, every bill, every election, every recession, and every unexpected repair. Freedom is when the money you saved years ago starts sending help to the person you are today. That is what retirement investing is supposed to do. It is not supposed to entertain you. It is not supposed to make Wall Street's quarterly numbers. It is not supposed to become a playground for complexity. It is supposed to turn labor into capital and capital into independence. So here is the final test. When this new retirement doorway opens, will you use it as a worker or as an owner? A worker asks, how much free money can I get? An owner asks, how do I build a permanent system? A worker asks, what is the hottest option? An owner asks, what can I hold for decades? A worker asks, what are rich people allowed to buy? An owner asks, what do I understand well enough to never panic out of? A worker waits for perfect conditions. An owner begins with the next dollar. If you qualify for a match, do not sneer at it. Take rational help when it is offered. If you already have access to a 401k, use it intelligently. If you are young and in a low tax bracket, study the Roth carefully. If alternative assets appear in your plan, approach them with curiosity but also with suspicion. Let them earn your trust through transparency, cost, liquidity, and a role that makes sense. Do not buy them because they sound like what billionaires buy. And above all, remember this, the retirement account is not the reset. You are the reset, your habits are the reset, your ability to say no to consumption is the reset. Your willingness to own productive assets for decades is the reset. Your refusal to let fees, fear, fashion, or politics control your money is the reset. The government may open a door, Wall Street may crowd around it, the media may argue about it, but when the noise fades, your future will still be determined by the same old arithmetic. Money saved, money invested, costs controlled, taxes understood, time allowed to work, behavior kept sane. That is how ordinary families become financially independent. Not all at once, not through a slogan, not through a headline, not because somebody named an account after a president, but because one person in the household finally decides that the paycheck will no longer die as consumption. Some of it will become ownership, some of it will become time, some of it will become dignity, and some of it will become a message to the future. I did not forget you. That is what every retirement contribution really says. It is a letter from your present self to your older self, written in dollars instead of words. Write that letter carefully. Do not let anyone charge too much to deliver it. Do not let anyone stuff it with things you do not understand. Do not tear it up because the market had a bad year. Do not forget to send it because life became busy. Send it again and again. Then one day, decades from now, your future self will open it and find not a promise, not a program, not a political headline, but real ownership. And that is when the reset becomes real.